And so I sat right down and recorded it. One of my solo structured improvisations, which usually start with a tonal center, a tempo, a rhythm, and usually one or two heads or melodic themes that will recur. That's kind of how I work with instrumental music. The important thing is to get the improvisation recorded well. Because as many of us learned from people years ago, back in the days of, ferric tape, friction recording, when they had editing blocks and razor blades and tape and stuff in order to do tape edits and stuff. A lot of us learned from musicians that we enjoyed, like Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, certainly innovators with studio recording back then. Frank Zappa was. I've known a lot of men over the years who reminded me of Frank Zappa, kind of living on coffee and cigarettes in their studio for hours at a stretch. And I've been through that too. I have a coffee right here. I think I'll have a sip. First thing in the morning, and my day generally does not begin until I have a cup of coffee in me, until I've washed my face, brushed my teeth, done some puttering around with chores, usually in the kitchen. Get through my daily constitutional, as my grandfather used to call it, and then come on out here to my porch studio, feed the animals, and get going with my day. This was a morning where right away I realized that this was going to be a day that as I listen to sirens in the distance, today's going to be interesting. I don't know why I feel that, but I have a feeling that today is going to be interesting. Things have been very, very interesting for too long. But I'm not one who's going to scoff or mock at what Scripture says is on the table now. I keep living my life. I keep working on my property out here. I took down a bunch of vines yesterday that had stopped flowering. Climbing vines that go all over some of this yard sculpture that I have right here in front of me. Usually by May, I can't see the house across the street. And that's okay. I can see the house across the street, and there looks to be about 10 by 7 feet, 4 foot high pile of garbage beside the road. Well, today was very interesting. It's been raining for the last couple of hours, and according to the radar, it's going to keep going all through the evening. It wasn't raining when I started walking, and by the time I was, a tenth of a mile from the house, it was coming down pretty good. Not a heavy rain, but a steady, light rain that lasts hours. This is the kind of rain that your lawn loves. Your trees and fruit and stuff love this, because it'll give it a deep soak. But anyways, speaking of a deep soak, I took a deep soak, and the video that I produced is telling me that I have such a slow connection that this video that I made while walking using my cell phone, I think my cell phone records things in a way that is maximum file size, so because it wants excellent resolution in audio, and it just creates these monumentally huge files. But the phone recording that I was making was on the subject of this Mount Herman, Herman Munster, and Lurching Herman, the song that the Moonmen recorded quite a while back. And so I went on this walk. I walked down the street. I observed political signs in the front yards of houses that no one lives in. That's a tactic that people play when they have no friends. They pretend they have friends by putting their political signs in front of vacant houses. Oh my God. But anyways, so I'm looking at those things and just pondering this place where we bought a house a couple decades ago and how it's changed. And I was just sort of ruminating. And lo and behold, as I'm walking in front of a preschool here in town that my wife used to work at years ago, and this thing has been up to its eyeballs in OES forever, okay? In a church that has more lodge bros in it, I think, than even the biggest church in town when it comes to the real wheelers and dealers, okay? This is a place where your so-called WMs are, right? Your worthy matrons and your worshipful masters and stuff, okay? I was walking past this place that has a little preschool in it that a whole lot of people who are associated with those occult groups have been sending their kids to for as long as I can remember. Okay, this is just one of the patterns that I've picked up on this town. And, obviously there's some indoctrination going on there, okay? Because, generational sin, it requires that the inertia continue, and so people basically look for systems that will ease the burden, right, of turning your children into little clones of your own belief system and the social habits and so forth. I've seen it now for almost 30 years. And it's not just here, it's everywhere. Everybody wants to be a star, but they're always choosing the wrong sky to throw themselves into. I'm walking past this preschool, and out walks the young lady who was to receive the envelope with the cash donations at the gym. This is 6-7 months ago. I haven't seen anybody from that family since about 30 or 40 of us out in Reedsville decided to try to help out her younger brother because he lost an arm in a recreational accident, and a bunch of people wanted to help out. So, as I have mentioned in previous videos, none of us that I speak with in this community, and remember, I don't use names, I don't identify places, I just talk about the what, and I ask people, how could this be? Okay, without personalizing it. At any rate, no one I know can understand why an envelope full of cash handed to someone that works for the fire department, who is co-manager of a gym at which the family of the injured child works out, how an envelope with a couple of $100 and change in it, this was an ex-student of mine, I might add, who told me he was there to open the gym for the very young lady I ran into this morning, and that she was on her way. This is like last November or December. And I asked him if he could give this envelope to that young lady when she arrived, after we had talked for a number of minutes, and I realized that this is someone, we know each other. And I have a good relationship with the fire department in this town. I've taught a bunch of the people that went on to become firemen and cops and stuff. Somewhere between him receiving the envelope, which he was going to hand directly to the person he was there to unlock the gym for, okay, the daughter in the family, the older sister of the young man who was injured, okay, the daughter of the man I campaigned for a couple of years ago, and the stepdaughter of a woman that I worked alongside and whose own daughter I taught years ago. There's never been any bad blood between me and these people, which is why it struck me as so completely perplexing that as soon as the PayPal transaction and the envelope with the cash had left our hands, okay, the people that did the fundraiser, all those people trusted me to make the transaction, all those Reedsville people. I was suddenly unfriended and blocked from Facebook Messenger, which is how I had been communicating with these parents about getting the money to them. And I still have in my records here online the PayPal transaction which was made to them and went through. But when we got to the cash place, things went strange. And suddenly I can no longer even contact them, I don't know where they live, to make sure that they receive the envelope full of cash, because they've slammed the door in my face for some reason. And this is the way I've described it to a number of other people that I trust, who I think of as wise, and they say, well, why in the world would they have done that? And I said, I don't know. And I haven't known for many, many months. And that's okay. I'd like to presume that in some way, shape, or form, the efforts of all those musicians in Reedsville and that small business benefited that young man in some way. He was a student of mine. I've done this for many kids that have gotten hurt, tried to rally up some support in the community, to help them out. Veterans do that. I'm not special. There's the young lady that was to receive the envelope. And that morning when I was continuing my walk after having had that conversation last November or December, I saw her vehicle pull in. So I've always presumed that that young man immediately handed it to her and talked about the conversation that we had. And then later that day, when she was finished working out at the gym, she went home and handed that envelope to her parents. That's what everybody figured would happen. So I still don't know. It's a real mystery to me. But anyways, I said earlier that today felt like a day when something interesting was going to happen, and lo and behold, I never imagined that I would get such a massive chunk of wow today. And so I had to pause where I was at in the making of a video in order to add this salient information, because the 2.5 gigabyte file that I created this morning while walking with my phone, it's in my phone. I'm trying to get it to my email where I can do something with it. And it's been trying to upload now for well over an hour, and only 6% of it is gone up. And it appears that our Wi-Fi is weak today, not enough bars for this sucker to slip through. Usually we transfers pretty quick. But anyways, it was just amazing to actually document that conversation this morning. And wow. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this audio into the middle of what I was talking about earlier, and then we'll see whether they fit like they might. I don't know. It feels like the puzzle's coming together, folks. Right. Hey, how are you?
Yes, I think so. Like 45 minutes, though. How are you?
Did your dad get that money?
I don't know. Which money?
The money that I gave to the fireman, who's one of the owners of the gym down there, when he said he was waiting to unlock the door for you to get into the gym. And I said, I have this cash from the fundraiser. Would you give it to her to give to her parents?
Okay.
And you pulled up shortly thereafter. So either he stole it or you got it.
Okay. I might have had it then. If I got any money, I gave it to him.
Okay, good.
I'll ask him to make
Okay.
sure.
It was weird because the day after that transaction, both of your parents blocked and canceled any kind of communication with me online, and it seemed very strange to me.
Oh.
Yeah. You know,
Interesting.
I wasn't doing that for any gratitude or thanks or anything like that. It was just to help a kid that I taught. And I got blocked and unfriended immediately after I gave that guy the envelope to give to you.
Oh, I don't know anything about it.
Everyone I've spoken to about it doesn't know why that could have happened.
Yeah.
Seems really strange.
That is strange.
Well, just so you know. Yep, take care. Good Lord in heaven. Those dogs don't like sirens. Hey, shut up. But anyways, I'm talking about Lurching Herman today. So that piece of music, why are dogs howling when I talk about Moonmen? Moonmen was a very, very interesting band to be a part of. It was a remarkable season to go through. And there have only been a few occasions in my adult life where a group of musicians came together and really enjoyed what they were doing. Okay? Every band has its most positive spells, of time that things seem to be firing on most of the cylinders. Hipbone was like that. The Cat's Pants were like that for sure. Durats was like that. Oh, you talk about a flash in the pan. That went from three people who really didn't know each other to three people that had produced a record that some pretty remarkable folks were liking. And then the whole thing exploded. And in the same way that I felt the need to put some distance between me and another musician, so too did the other musician in the band feel about the situation we'd gotten ourselves into. We'd been sold an iteration of a female voice that we'd heard before. We heard it in Nico. We heard it in Marianne Faithfull. Some other people come to mind. That kind of raspy, world-weary, melancholy, very nearly completely burned out kind of female voice that communicates all sorts of scar tissue. And so many people are wounded on the world right now, traumatized, that I think that the Durats record very, very briefly captured a zeitgeist, because it was an international group. Three people that, with additional players, but three of us wrote the music: Dave Newhouse, myself, and Carla Durats. Carla wrote all the lyrics. Carla sang all the songs. And Dave and I attached what we were hearing musically to those texts and sung lyrics. And that was some pretty interesting music. But how did Dave and I begin recording together? Well, that preceded Durats and it preceded Moonmen. And it was during a period of time not too long after I spent a year recording a new piece of music every single day. I felt that kind of deep dive would hopefully reveal, exhume, clarify my guitar style, which was no longer imitative. Back in the 1980s, I was getting compared to everybody, which at the time felt good. In hindsight, most of those music reviewers couldn't couldn't describe my music except by comparison. And you know, that's the fruit of Crawdaddy and Cream and Rolling Stone. Those reviewers we loved so much when we were young and aesthetically pretty illiterate were like, oh, they sound like Captain Beefheart. I might like that. I'm here to tell you that very nearly every single group or artist that was ever compared to Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band didn't sound anything like them. Maybe a little herky-jerky. But that double slide guitar thing was never replicated. Really. The closest you're ever going to get to Beefheart and the Magic Band firing on all cylinders live would be the Allman Brothers. Rustic Henge, when Carl Palmer was drumming for them in England. Very Beefhearty. And maybe Kralgerson Stalton, right? Which was an interesting trio of people that sounded quite a bit like Lick My Decals Off Baby era Beefheart. But when I started to get back to Moonmen and my musical friendship with Dave Newhouse, we're really different. You know, Dave could have been a music teacher. He really knows that stuff. All the nuts and bolts. He's got a wonderful melodic sense. And Dave's compositions are able to really evoke a lot of melancholy and regret, which I feel all the time. I was very attracted to it. Like a moth to a flame that'll catch its wings on fire. I'm drawn to melancholy. It's a melancholic world. So Dave and I had done some back and forth on the phone, which led to, yeah, send me a track. I'll see if I can think of anything to put on it. He was very generous. I try to be generous too. And we began to record things together. And, you know, I realized right away, as has happened in the past when I work with other people, that people realize at a certain point that this bubbly, wordy person, this very prolific person, produces music that doesn't sound like anybody else's music. Okay, I'm going to stop. Well, what exactly were moon men all about? Well, moon men were four distinct beings, each with a name, who had a fascination with the media of human beings. They were fascinated with the planet Earth, astonished at the music and the art of these pale, weak creatures. So much so that they felt that that was a form of expression that they might like to try. The problem is, just like human beings, all four of those aliens spoke different languages. They looked different. They had different limitations. At least one of them didn't have any ears. And in the same way that quantum computing is able to sift through a bunch of data very quickly and cough out a product, that's kind of the way that the moon men operated. They'd heard all of music produced by the human race. They felt that the human race was really beginning to get it right with rock and roll and jazz, and that all of the music that preceded that were just baby steps. And so they sought to create a music that accentuated the high points in this thing that human beings create called music. And, you know, each of the moon men had different kinds of enthusiasms like individuals do. Eschaton Crater, my character, whose name means end times crater. Eschatology being the study of apocalyptic prophecy. It was a combination of four musical languages, four distinct personalities. Each of those personalities had profound gifts and profound limitations. And I think moon men found out that they were really quite similar when it comes to music as the human beings that they were emulating. High points, low points, moments of beauty, stretches of terror. And the great irony of moon men is that even though they knew everything that had ever happened to a human musician or composer since the beginning of time, and of course they extracted some of the sounds they used in their music from across the ages. So you'll hear logs hitting logs. You'll hear stones hitting scrap metal. Because somewhere along the line, moon men had learned that to some people in early jazz, anything was a drum. Everything was a drum. And that was something that came to the fore with moon men. You can almost hear the history of percussion if you listen to our canon. And as I said, just like a lot of human groups that achieve great things creatively, for all their brilliance, what moon men never knew was that part of the deal was that it would fall apart. It would fall apart. and that there would be hard feelings and acrimony, just like with the Beatles and so many other groups that had a moment of searing light pass through their teamwork. And they walked away from the light.
4000 AD. The year was 4000 AD, and the Earth was no longer the blue planet that humanity once called home. The oceans had grown red with fire from the skies. The air trembled with storms that never ended, and mountains cracked like dry bread. Humanity had reached its pinnacle, machines wiser than kings, cities brighter than stars, and knowledge deeper than the oceans. Yet in their greatness, they forgot humility. The sun itself began to flicker like a dying flame. Day and night twisted into endless twilight. The moon hung shattered, torn apart by centuries of war and hunger for power. Across the skies came signs no man could deny. Stars fell like showers of arrows. Rivers boiled in silence. Shadows walked upon the earth, though no light remained to cast them. The final gathering. In the ruins of what was once Jerusalem, rebuilt 1,000 times and fallen again, people gathered. Nations no longer mattered. No armies, no kings, no presidents, no emperors.